Good morning and welcome to ASL's HR in 10.
At 10.
I'm Jason Perry.
And I'm Kimberly Bradshaw.
And we're here as ever on a Thursday morning to talk to you about what's going on in the lovely world of employment and human resources. So, Kimberly, I'm thinking we ought to do something a bit different this week, and maybe we come to it second, but I think climate change has to be in today, given what's going on.
Yes, I think we absolutely should look at something that is so topical and that isn't COVID related, which is terribly exciting.
Well, now you said that, shall we start with COVID?
Oh, you're so mean. No, we're going to stay with climate change and HR. I think for me, what's been coming out is, who was it did a survey, but there's been a growth in people, how they recruit. They've changed how they are looking for jobs.
Yep.
So they're looking for companies where, there is a statement saying we want to be carbon neutral.
Yes.
We want zero carbon emissions.
I've just looked down at my notes to check it. It's getmyfirstjob.co.uk, which we might be able to figure out what that site does. But their research has shown that 33% of their audience group believe climate change has affected how they search for opportunities. And that's really interesting. And I don't think by how they search that means whether or not their computer's powered by solar when they do it, as it were. But albeit the words almost suggest that. I think it's kind of the opportunities they take. So we've gone through an era where, if I wind the clock back 30, 40 years, people used to work locally. People used to be near to their home and live near to their jobs. And we've made it quite normal for people to travel 30, 40 miles, sit in a car for an hour to get to work every day. And we wonder why our roads are congested. That seems to be changing, doesn't it, in this survey?
It really does. And I think a lesson for those recruiting in all of this is very much to, make a statement in your job adverts about what you're doing. What are your climate goals? What are you doing? And I think also it's going to be a challenge for those that harm the planet in some way, because that was another figure that came out. It was.
Well, 29% of job applicants, job seekers, were effectively saying they do not want to work for an organisation that is causing harm to the environment. Now, I'm actually kind of surprised it's that low, but I think the question is, what do we mean by harm and how significant is that? And how significant is your I don't want to work? Is it I will not?
Yeah.
In which case are we not likely to find, I'm going to try not to mention any names to get us into trouble when we do this live, but there are certain organisations, let's say in the oil and gas industry, to pick as an example, where they may find it harder and harder to recruit if those organisations are not actively working to rebalance their green credentials.
And also, as you're saying that, what's going through my head is, what about the renewable energy companies? Yes, they do great stuff in terms of the renewables, but what are their internal working practices, and what carbon emissions do they have there? So are they balancing each other out?
You've just got my mind going on to the lovely chief executive of Octopus who says we don't need HR. But we'll try and leave that one aside for a moment. But you make a really, really good point. And the final stat I want to put out there was 68% of people said they wanted to work for an employer that's doing something positive for the future of the planet. Now, we right now are in probably the most difficult recruitment and retention market I suspect you and I have seen in our lifetime, certainly in our time in HR, as we're near full employment. And there are all sorts of challenges going on. And if you want to stand out from the crowd, if you want to hire people, you've got to find a way of appealing to those job seekers. And it strikes me now, green credentials is one of the ways you can show it. It's not just about salaries, but it's about benefits, working conditions, and green credentials, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that's what I was alluding to when I mentioned about, making those kinds of statements in your job adverts. And certainly I was listening to the radio on a drive back from a meeting yesterday, and again, I'm not going to name any names, but there were quite a few organisations that came on and said, this is what we're doing to make sure that we have zero carbon emissions.
Yes.
This is what we're doing towards climate change. And the big companies get that platform.
Yes.
They're invited to speak to the radio or the television news or whatever. It's the smaller companies, the medium-sized companies, that are going to struggle to get their message out in that respect and attract the right people.
Yes. And I would love to put solar all over the roof of ASL towers, as I might call it. But I fear, as we're in a Grade 2 listed Georgian townhouse, the nice people at Hastings Borough Council might object. But it's on my goal of things to try and get to. But let's go on.
No, you've got to share your joke.
Oh, have I? All right then. Sorry. Having shared a joke with Kimberly, it now has to go live on air. Apparently heard at the COP26 climate conference was somebody saying solar energy has got to be part of the solution, but it won't happen overnight. So there we are. On that note, Let's move on. Interestingly, we were talking about how we, let's say, attract and appeal to people. And I think there's a little bit here coming into some of the COVID stuff, which we might touch on. But probably first is Plan B, I think.
Oh, yes. I mean, locked down by another name in my eyes. Call me cynical, which I am. I think companies really need to be preparing for it. I know the sort of government statistics show that, we peaked a week or so ago and what have you. But if you look at local rates, I've been using the Zoe app, otherwise known as the Emma app, as I said yesterday, but the Zoe app for COVID-19. Our local stats show we're 50% higher than our highest ever rate so far.
Yes.
And it's scary.
There are huge numbers of COVID out there. As you know, I had COVID a few weeks ago, and as a result, everybody in my house got it. We've actually now, having navigated about 18 months of this crisis without anybody at ASL having it, we've got multiple cases, and not through us contacting each other, because we have been working from home. We made the decision about 3-4 weeks ago to kind of adopt Plan B intermediate, let's call it, and we've gone back to making sure we do not interact with each other. So we've gone back to home working predominantly with only one person in the office.
Yes, and just to add to those statistics, I'm dealing on a day-to-day basis with more COVID cases with our clients than I was December last year, which was, our peak. It is a challenge. I think companies need to be ready to pivot instantly again, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah, I think case numbers are as high, if not higher, than we saw in January. But in January, we were all locked down. Yes, we are safer because of the vaccinations, massively so. Hospitalisations and deaths are running at about a quarter of the rate they were last time we had these kind of case numbers. Yeah. But what really strikes me is we may need to take secondary action. And we've already seen in Westminster this move towards face masks, given it was Westminster that tried to dump face masks. I think we therefore can reasonably expect to have to go back to it. Jonathan Van Tam was saying this morning in the Times that people are going to have to be very careful if we are going to navigate Christmas successfully. So I think what we're likely to see, face masks back, home working back, and possibly that much talked about vaccine passport for social gatherings. And I think that could be in the next few weeks, is my feeling.
Yes, hopefully not until after my holiday. I don't want to get trapped on the Isle of Man. Thank you very much. However lovely it
Yes.
would be to spend that time with my parents.
Yes, absolutely. Well, on that note, HR in 10 has run 10 minutes, but I will just add as we wrap up, both Kimberly and I are taking breaks over the next couple of weeks. So I won't be around next week. And as much as Kimberly would love to talk to herself for 10 minutes, probably best we wait till I'm back, and then Kimberly's away the following week. So HR in 10 is taking a much needed 2-week holiday. We will be back in a couple of weeks, and we look forward to seeing you.